The Global Reporting Initiative, which is a non-profit organization that promotes economic sustainability, will officially launch its Focal Point South Africa initiative at the Johannesburg Stock Exchange. The initiative aims to make sustainability reporting standard practice for companies and organizations in South Africa and the wider region. Joining us now live from the JSE to explain more about the plan is Corley Leroux, who's the head of the SRI Index and Sustainability at the JSE. Thanks so much, Corley, for joining us this afternoon. Let's get straight into it, because I went through a bit of an introduction there looking at the Global Reporting Initiative and the fact that it's officially launching today. Spell it out for us in simple terms. What are we looking at here, practically speaking?
Well, I mean, the Global Reporting Initiative is a global body that has been around for quite a long time and has really established themselves as a benchmark in helping companies with doing their sustainability reporting. A lot of South African companies already rely on the GRI guidelines for their sustainability reporting, and it's also the preferred approach of the King Code in terms of guiding companies in how they should do sustainability reporting. So having a physical presence in South Africa and in the broader African region is going to be hugely helpful to just help facilitate engagement and to really just bring that issue up to the agenda of companies and investors alike.
How are we doing on that front at this stage of the game, and what targets have been set in terms of where we need to get to?
Well, in the SRI index, we already see that a large number of companies do use the GRI reporting guidelines, and we see a strong correlation between those that use the guidelines and that are successful in the SRI index. However, I think there is a big realization that sustainability reporting needs to evolve, and particularly as companies embark on the integrated reporting pathway, that it needs to evolve to be focused on material issues and to really be transparent in portraying information that will be useful for investors in making sustainable investment decisions.
I was reading in the report that South Africa is experiencing a major upsurge in sustainability. In 2010-2011, the number of companies and organizations in South Africa who reported using the GRI guidelines increased by 97%. I mean, that certainly seems impressive, Corley, but to what extent do we have to take into consideration a low base effect here?
I think it is something to bear in mind. A lot of our smaller and medium-sized companies are grappling to understand what their sustainability challenges are. Using the GRI framework, and particularly the G4 guidelines, which are coming out shortly, which will help companies look particularly at issues like materiality, will be very useful for these smaller companies, even if they don't necessarily use the guidelines up front, but just to help guide their thinking in terms of how they're going to provide information to shareholders.
Let's take a closer look at how they're thinking, because where you're taking this to the broader region, Corley, what are some of the attitudes and perceptions that African organizations hold when it comes to the development of sustainability reporting, in the region?
Well, I think one has to acknowledge, and it was also mentioned at the launch event, that there is a big differentiation between South Africa and the broader African region, particularly sub-Saharan Africa. South Africa is quite advanced in its sustainability reporting thanks to the things like the SRI Index and the King Code and the extensive use of GRI. However, the picture is not the same outside of South Africa, and so having the focal point in South Africa as a launching pad to go into the broader region to try and build that awareness, if you will, about sustainability particularly, and helping to motivate and mobilize the companies in the African region to start doing sustainability reporting. I think the danger, though, is that one has to bear in mind that Africa is a big place and that there are different issues that each country and each company will have to face. And a broad guideline that will help companies think about those issues will certainly be very helpful in that respect.
What are some of the key challenges that you see companies or organizations facing as they embark down this road?
Well, I think materiality obviously is a key issue. It's often very easy just to think that more disclosure is better disclosure, and the more information you put out there, the better. That's not necessarily the case. I think it's important to make sure that companies understand what their stakeholders want and what information is going to be really useful to them. So that certainly is a big challenge. And the engagement, therefore, will be very important. I think also companies need to start leveraging technology to their advantage to get the information out there. And I think Africa does have its challenges there, but there are opportunities that can certainly be tapped into to help support this drive.
If we take a look at South Africa, because, as you say, we've been leading the path in this regard, what lessons have we learned that we need to start sharing across the region?
Well, certainly I think the point about more disclosure isn't better disclosure is a key learning. I think South African companies are also becoming awake to the fact that investors are increasingly caring about sustainability issues, and that you need to make sure that the way in which you put information out there is material and relevant, and that you steer clear from things like greenwash or PR speak, and that you understand the audience that you are talking to. And I think particularly companies who work throughout Africa also need to understand that they need to be able to portray their own values and not just use an approach that fits with the lowest common denominator in the country where they operate. And that's an important thing, to have your internal business ethic drive through all of your operations wherever you may be.
Of course, what would act as incentive is if these companies are convinced that it will in fact impact investment flow in a big way. I mean, what kind of impact do you foresee this having on investor appetite if we get it 100% correct?
Well, I think the hope is that investors will then be able to make better assessments of what the company's business model is and what their strategy and their potential sustainability for the longer term is. We have a number of large institutional investors in South Africa that are already working throughout Africa and to help promote sustainable investment on the continent. There are also, plans through the Sustainable Stock Exchange Initiative and the United Nations Principles for Responsible Investment to spread this message throughout the broader continent, and to involve investors across Africa to also become part of this debate. Because I agree with you that, that really is key to ensuring that what companies do gets the recognition that it deserves.